Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Connect to Florida. So as you can see, I'm all set up here on my Zoom to be able to show you my screen. And what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to show you an estimated net sheet for a buyer purchase in a community. Many of you, after I did 2 or 3 days ago, I did a video on what it costs, line by line breakdown, to sell a home in Southwest Florida in Lee County. So of course the numbers are going to be a little bit different based upon your particular address, but a lot of the fees are relatively set, meaning they're state fees. So if you bring a mortgage or you're paying off a mortgage, there are things that are set. Not everything is set to the penny, but it gives you a really good idea. And when I go through this, I do tell you, and I did the same thing on the seller side, I will go through and tell you what would be a moving target and what would be just barely moving at all, so you can get a really good idea of it. So when I did the seller side, many of you said do the buyer side in a community because so much of the area is in a community. So we're going to jump on the screen here. Now, I want to say for the purpose of YouTube bots out there, because they're all over the place, this is not a real closing. Earlene Carrington is not really the divorcee of Earl Carrington, who sold his house with us last week. Can I say sold his house? So I just want, this is not a real address, 1234 Naples, not a real address. So I want to say that before anybody gets demonetized here, being me. So anyway, let's jump into this and we'll go through each line so you can see what it costs to buy a home in Florida. All right. So like I said, our buyer is Earlene Carrington. By the way, this is courtesy of Paradise Coast Title. Here's their contact information if you need a title company or an attorney. Sam Sod is a real estate attorney, really does a really good job. So that's the contact information right there. All right, so Earlene and Earl got divorced. And you know, Earl sold last week. We watched his sale.
Yeah.
So now Earlene is taking her money and she's buying. So her sale price, the house she's buying, is in a community and it's $510,000. Earlene's going to put 20% down because she's very wise. Here's what her payment's going to be, by the way, on that $500,000 house, $510,000 with 20% down. Here's her principal and interest at $2,496. Property taxes $608, homeowners insurance $483, HOA dues. So that gives her a payment of $4,087, because some people might be curious about that as well. So let's run through our breakdown. Let me just move you here so you can see it bigger. All right. So 20% down is $102,000. That's what she's going to put down. Her prepaid interest is $69.19. This is what an estimated net sheet looks like. This is what your closing sheet is going to look like. You've seen those legal sheets that you sign? Okay, title costs. This is what most of you always want to know. So the closing fee is $850. That is what it defaulted to on the seller side as well. So I mentioned on the seller side that can you get that lower? You probably can. Can you get it higher? You probably can. But this is a very good average. This is very typical of the area. Owner's title insurance. Now, if you watched the other one, I will link the other one down below, the seller side, but I mentioned that in Lee County, it's very typical and it's actually templated into our contracts that the seller pay title insurance. So the buyer chooses the title company and the seller pays the title insurance premium. In Collier County, not the case. And as I said in the other video, everything is negotiable other than standard things that are fees from Florida, like 70 cents on the dollar or 10 cents on the dollar, those kind of things. Anything that is standardized can't be negotiated, but most everything else can be negotiated. So, but typical in Collier County is for the buyer to pay the title insurance premium. Now, why the reason that I say typical is that it's a hard sell. If 99% of people in Collier County, when they buy, are paying their own title insurance premium because it is to their benefit, then it's going to be it's a hard negotiation to be that 1% that doesn't. So just keep that in mind. And then also keep in mind that your agent can request you're the buyer. She can request the seller's title insurance premium paperwork if it wasn't their policy, if it was within 3 years. So if they bought their house a couple years ago, you will get a credit for their title insurance premium. A lot of agents don't know that. A lot of buyers don't know that. So you need to know that. So you're going to be charged, or Earlene is, $2,625. The lender's title insurance, because remember, Earlene's going to bring a loan, is $250. The title search fee is $175. What is that? That's to make sure there's no liens on the property. You absolutely want that. E-recording fee, $9.50. Lien search. Again, are there any $117? Are there any liens on the property? Is there a mechanic's lien? Did Earl, maybe before they got divorced, did he have a plumber come in that he never paid? So those kind of things they're looking for. Loan document prep fee. This is one of those fees that people will call junk fees, but it gets put in there. It's very common. Mortgage companies, they will charge this kind of stuff. Again, here, courier wire fee. They're going to charge you for everything, $95. Now, I know you're saying, what the heck, Barrett? I can do a wire for $30 at my bank, or maybe your bank doesn't even charge you, but you're going to get charged $95. All right, so the ALTA for a planned unit development is $100. The environmental protection lien is $100. And the restrictions, easement, and minerals ALTA is $287.50. Again, fees that you're going to see very commonly in a planned unit development. You're going to get aggravated, but in the end, you're going to pay it or you're not going to buy that house, because it's the cover charge. I hate to tell you that, but it's the cover charge. And I want to stop here for a minute, because one of my very wise viewers out there brought up that in a PUD, in a planned unit development, and especially in a condo, you will have, as a seller, not a buyer, but I want to make this distinction. You will definitely have, when you sell, if there's in a condo for sure, sometimes in an HOA as well, many times in an HOA, but they're much higher with a condo, you're going to have an estoppel fee. And that's another fee that people get really aggravated about. That means basically start and stop. So what happens is the HOA or the condo association will charge the seller for the start and stop. And I have seen it as high as $1,500, which is that a cash grab? I mean, I'll let you do the math on that, but it is not uncommon to see that. You will not see it on the buyer side unless somebody negotiated it, which is, I've never seen a buyer willing to pay the seller's estoppel, the start and stop, unless it's maybe like an as-is, auction property. But otherwise, you should not see that on the buyer's side, and you're not seeing it here either. But it was a good point that one of you made. Deed recording fee, $27. Mortgage recording fee, $180. Doc stamp mortgage fee, $1,428. This is changeable based upon the mortgage. So this is one of those things that people get shocked by when they end up paying it. The higher the dollar amount, the higher that's going to be. Intangible tax another thing that people get aggravated about that they have to pay, and that is all part of the recording fee with a mortgage. This is why I always tell people, depending on the price point, you can save multiple thousands if you don't bring a mortgage. It does cost a lot more to bring a mortgage. Then we have a little bit of a credit from the seller to the buyer because of a tax proration. Same thing on the HOA dues. The buyer's going to get a credit on that as well. So that adds up to about $6,000-ish. So here's how you can figure that. $102,000 is what, you know what's not on here, by the way, as well? Earnest money. If you put earnest money down, say you put $20,000 in earnest money down, you're going to get a credit for that too, because it's your money. But this makes it a little easier, but just keep that in mind. $102,000 due at closing is $107,000. So again, $510,000 home. And the difference is really only, what is that? I mean, about $5,200 or so. That isn't terrible. I don't think that's terrible at all with the numbers that we used here. So if you take that percentage-wise, that's only about 1%. So I tell you that because sometimes people get really scared that there are these really high fees to buy a home in Florida. There's a lot of rumors out there about that. If you had layer upon layer upon layer of like golf course fees, that can happen. You can have, remember, we talked about transfer fees. We talked about that on the last video. There can be a transfer fee that has to be paid. So if you buy in a community and there's a $5,000 transfer fee door to door to door, and that's disclosable, by the way, then you're going to see that on there. That's going to be another $5,000. If you've got some escrow or what we'll call impound fees that a club requires, again, much more common with golf course type communities, then they might ask you to escrow in $1,500 or impound whole or impound in $1,500 or so. Those are all things that are possible and likely probable in a golf course community, a highly amenitized community. But if there's no golfing, honestly, it's far, far less likely. But you do sometimes see those transfer fees. And I mentioned this, like I said in the other video, a transfer fee is every single door. So every door pays it. I've seen it as low as $2,000. I've seen it as high as $7,000, $8,000 on a private golf club. So you might say, what is that? And can I say I don't want to pay it? So what it is just an assessment to every door to help sort of beef up reserves for the club and the restaurant and the pool and all those things. It's used for that. Can you get out of it and say, I'm not going to pay it? Only if you negotiate for the seller to pay it. And most of the time, if a seller paid it when they bought, they're not going to want to pay it when they sell. Bye-bye. So keep that in mind. I hope that helps. That gives you a good idea of what Earlene paid to get out of her marriage and go buy herself her new little dream home